Grief has been one of the more difficult emotions for me to fully embrace in this human experience that I'm living. But as I know with my personal practice, the things that I'm most resistant to are the things that I need to fully step towards. And grief has been one of those things that will constantly come into our lives and will give us that challenge of how deep our toolbox is and how well we are with dealing with things like grief. Today's guest, Kylee Gies, is going to share a story of her own personal grief and how she's used this experience to give her the strength to move forward and to find the reasons why she has this experience and how she can utilize it to help humanity. So Ms. Kylee Gies we'll be talking with today. She's a beautiful human being who's got a great story and very inspiring with what she has moved towards with the processing of grief and how she's used it to help continue to nourish her family and herself. So very mixed bag of emotions today with the conversation. There's definitely sad points, but I think all of it is beneficial and all of it ends on a happy note and is something that we all need to move towards the processing of our difficult emotions. So hope you get something out of the conversation. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back to our show. Today, sitting across from me is a dear close friend of mine. Love you like a sister. We've done many events together. We've done many yoga classes together. We've sweat together. We've cried together. We've done all the things. Ms. Kylee Gies is she's a teacher, cross-cultural field instructor. She's been an international student advisor, studied Aikido for 10 years, yoga and mindfulness meditation for about 25. She's certified through Creative Grief Studios to become a creative grief guide, as well as recently started Sacred Dwellings LLC. Boom! Fucking resume of awesomeness right there.
Thanks,
Welcome
man.
to the show, girl.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
We've been tap dancing around this conversation for a few months now. Trying to get schedules lined up and all this kids things and all this stuff. And man, I'm so excited to actually have you sitting across from me with a microphone in front of you to record some of this. I love our conversation so much.
Me too.
Thank
you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how we started our dialogue, just after yoga class, just chit-chatting away, and something always good comes out of it. So,
definitely.
yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. Those post-yoga conversations, just in general with whoever, are so good because most of us have just really left it on the mat and are pretty cracked open to just talk about whatever comes up, whatever the conversation dictates. A lot of us, when we practice in the evenings, we have a little bit more time because let's say we have a family, other family members taking care of said family. We have our break from whatever day that we've had, work, family, all that stuff. And so sometimes we tend to give ourselves a little bit more leniency after those classes to sit there, be with our thoughts, and then have those cool conversations that happen. And so between you, Monica, Michelle Gorman, I mean, all these beautiful people that we would just sit after Bliss and just have these cool conversations about life.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's part of why I love doing yoga, because it gets all the stickiness, all the toxins out, and then the creativity flows once again.
Hell yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So we've known each other for a couple of years, and we met through yoga. We met through Bliss, and I mentioned that I've been lucky enough to attend a few events at your place as a guest, as a vendor, and as a practitioner. And have actually met a few guests from your events that I've had on the podcast, like Don Little Torres.
Yeah.
Freaking amazing woman.
Amazing.
I remember I was sitting there with Monica at the end of the vendor line, selling our goods, and Don had started up I think she was doing a women's circle, women's group.
Yeah, it was a ritual of the womb originally called. So women's ceremony and circle. Yeah.
So beautiful. So just an amazing group of women out there on their own healing journey. And, we're pretty far away. So I was, just absorbing by proxy and feeling the energies. But as soon as Don started that sound bath and I'm a sound practitioner, so I love sound. As soon as I hear sound, I'm like, ooh, what's that? And then she started that gong work, and I was at least probably 100 yards away, 60 yards away from her, and that gong was just traveling through my body. And I'm like, I've got to talk to this woman. I've got to get in front of this woman and talk
Yes.
with her. So
I love Dawn.
thank you for
Yeah,
introducing her to me. That was
absolutely.
beautiful.
The universe brings it all together.
It always does. It always does.
Yes.
So, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is that you've been very open about your the grief that you've had in life, and the way that you've allowed this grief to help you with your life and not just like encompass your life in this negative way that a lot of people that have grief in their lives kind of let them do, right? Grief's a hard thing. Grief's a really hard thing to manage. One of the quotes that I love, and I think I've shared this on this podcast before, is that there are as many ways to grieve as there are people in this world, because it's very unique to the individual.
It's very personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be said about a lot of emotions, but grief is one of those ones that can cripple us and really take a hold. So if you are open to kind of starting to share your story about the path that grief has led you in, or led you to grief, and then your path through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start with my son then.
Yeah.
Because really, I mean, I don't think I've been faced with like a really deep grief. I mean, we all experience grief. We have different psychological deaths, emotional deaths. Everything is about the life cycle.
Right.
From, the biological to the inner, and it moves to the outer. But I really had nothing that has, I want to say, inspired, actually, because that's where I'm at right now.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, it's devastation, right? It's total, like a part of me died the day my son died.
Right.
And part of me died with him. But anyway, this journey started like 5 years ago in August. So I just took my son to a normal swim lesson, and I had my other baby on my back. And, it wasn't the pool, it wasn't the water, it wasn't any of the things. It was like the 20 seconds afterwards where he was on my leg and then he wasn't. And he went over to a table and he was playing around with another little boy. And this table wasn't attached to the wall.
Right.
So he jumped on that table and the table came down on him. And I mean, now I'm okay to talk about it.
Yeah,
it's good for me to talk about it, and it keeps changing its own position when I do.
Right.
Consistently.
Yes. I think that's an important message too, is like no matter how much you've quote unquote like conquered your grief or accepted your grief or moved with your grief still sucks, and it can still hit you. It can still be that wave of emotion, even as adjusted as you are to it.
Oh yeah, I definitely, being that it's a personal experience, I think I'll speak from my own perspective, but I definitely don't think grief isn't something you always get over,
right.
or you get through. You just kind of change your orientation and reaction and purpose with it.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened for me. So the death of my son, it just cracked my whole life closed yet open.
Okay.
It's like it cracked my heart open. And, well, it's like where to start with that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because I think the first year is an extremely difficult year. At least so is for me. But people also call it like a magical year. Others too that have written about this, but you're very close to the veil.
Yeah.
And half of you is here on earth per se with your feet on the ground, and the other is in the sky.
Yeah.
Searching for your loved one, speaking to your loved one, listening, also being supported and guided by forces, that you can't really comprehend or put into words.
Right.
And so, yeah, I feel that, so kind of going through the dark night of my soul, really.
Right, yeah. And I think that, you kind of have to enter into that part too. And that's, I think maybe that's part of the acceptance of it, the acceptance of the action that happened. So I think, when my dad passed away 12 years ago, And I had my bouts of grief with it. Definitely had my bouts. But my mom, definitely took it a little bit harder to her husband. And he's my dad, obviously. I love my dad, and my mom and dad were together, and my dad was a very loving man. But it definitely hit my mom a lot harder. And there was that denial for a long time of like, no, he's not gone. No, he's not. He's going to be home. But once you do accept that darkness really does kind of hit in there. But it's part of the process. You have to accept the fact that that person's gone for the repair and the recovery to start happening.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about, I think, trying to remember the name, I think her name was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I have to, but Elizabeth, she was the first person, I think, around like 1969 or in that time frame to label like, stages of grief. But she was doing a big study with dying patients. And so the perspective of that was her observing dying patients and kind of phases that came up in a person's being in facing their own death.
Wow.
So that's where that kind of model began, but I think since it has expanded, but it's like a whole area of study that will only continue, I think, to expand. And like a student of hers named David Kessler, he's also very well known in the grief world, has his own offerings. And he kind of put in this 6th stage of grief called meaning. The denial, the anger, and depression, and all these things. I really registered with what he added to it as her student, like making meaning of it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean that others don't exist. Like denial, I mean, it's kind of like a blind spot. You don't know it's there until you do. And you're not sitting there like identifying which fucking phase you're in,
You're right.
Excuse me.
Check. Number 3, you got it.
Excuse me. Are we starting to throw the F-bombs?
You're fine.
That happens with you.
I bring that out of people,
Well, I just think it's kind of, the free spirit in me is like, okay, what? Like, I'm walking through what stages? Like, I don't know. This just feels wild and crazy. I'm dying, like. And I think, it's a wild process. And, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, great book. Why am I'm blanking on his name. It'll come back to me. But everyone should read that book.
Wild Edge of Sorrow. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
All right.
It kind of recognizes the wildness of grief. And it's not a contained entity, It's like, and when it comes up anytime it wants to. It's, yes, especially around dates or certain times a year or situations if you get triggered. But there's no, like, control over that.
Right.
So I feel like that's where the acceptance comes in. Like, yes, the bigger moment of when your life changed or the death itself, but also continual working with it and surrendering to what's rising and needed and what needs to be felt or paid attention to.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, I feel that with that statement, it's similar to energy work where it's not what you want. It's going to give you what you need. And similar to grief or emotions in general, like when those emotions come up, they're coming up for a reason. So to push them down and to not experience them is only going to make them worse. So finding the reason why that grief is there at that moment and embracing it and accepting it and breathing through it or however you need to move through that moment. But one of my favorite lines in the Tao is, deal with the difficult while it's still easy. A lot easier said than done because when bad shit happens, we don't really want to face it. We want to run from it. But the more that we run and the longer it takes for us to deal with it, the harder that dealing with becomes because now it's seeded into us. As hard as it is, and, obviously you got to let things happen. You can't force grief to go away. You can't be like, I've accepted it. Why are everybody still sad? There's still, there's still a reason you're sad. You still need to be sad. Right? Not live in sadness, but embrace the sadness when it's there.
Yeah, and I think, like, grief, depending on the trauma for people or what happens, like, it has a propensity to take you down a journey of your whole life, not just that moment.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a grief spiral, like, from the time you're born to the now.
Right.
And for me, it was like, I don't know if it was like a existential crisis. I don't want to call it a crisis. It didn't, in a way it was,
Yeah.
but it only deepened my questioning about existence. And so there's that, and that's a beautiful path.
That's really beautiful.
And that's been something that has led me to more of a post-traumatic growth experience. And I think that's, now I'm in a place where I can look back and say, oh, I really do believe that these kinds of experiences are offered in our life for learning
I agree.
and teaching us something.
Yeah.
And I also know that space where you're like F-bombing it and like raising your fist to that and F that and like, what? Like, no way, that's like a different place.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just as valid.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, the fuck it's.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, the questioning whys, why me's, like,
Yeah.
Again, we don't want to live in those places, but, we gotta experience that. You ask the question. A lot of times, like, so when working with clients with energy work, people are like, well, I want to talk to my guides, but my guides won't talk to me. Cool. Have you actually talked to your guides? Have you reached out and said, hey, guides, how's it going? My name's Adam. It's nice to meet you. How can I communicate with you? It's the same thing with that grief, with any emotions, right? You got to get those questions out. Why me? Why the fuck me? What did I do, right? Now, that's a very generic question, and, I think...
Good place to start, though.
Good place to start. A good place to start.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't feel that we are that important, right? To have something good or bad happen to them, right? And so when you ask that question, why me? Maybe you might realize how important you actually are and how important you are in this system of world, right? When you say, why me? Then you actually turn that spotlight and to say, like, why was I that important to be focused on for that amount of time? What is it that I have to learn that I'm not learning, right? And those are all the questions that you can find if you ask the questions. But if you just accept the grief and you accept the negativity around whatever emotion that it is, then you'll never fully embrace the reason that emotion's there. But it's still hard to ask the questions. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, all you gotta do is just say why, or find the answer. It might take you years to find that answer.
Yeah.
But ask the questions and start to try to find the answer, not just living in the grief or living in the troublesome emotion, I guess.
Yeah, I think a good question is why not me?
Wow.
I mean,
yeah, I don't think I've heard it phrased that way, but I love that.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken me a lot of work to get to that, but I feel I resonate with that more. But when I was in that place of why, it's almost like a puzzle that torments you, right? So you're trying to figure out, like, here's a thought my husband and I talked about. It was just kind of blew my sockets. I was like, geez, okay, so what if when I lived in Boston back in 1999 or 2000, what if on August 23rd, I forgot, and in that year, I forgot my keys instead of not forgetting my keys? What kind of trajectory would have happened in my life? Would my son still have died?
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
kind of like each moment building upon one another up until something.
Right,
And
yeah.
so I was always trying to put together this, like, just deep, almost like deep thoughts.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like, so if I didn't live in Boston, or, but it's really not a helpful rabbit hole,
Right,
if you
yeah.
will. And so I found myself personally, like, in a lot of good rabbit holes to visit, but not ultimately the one that was going to help me heal myself.
Yeah. So with that, what was your after this tragic incident with Oliver? What was the healing journey that you found? Do you remember, like, kind of not necessarily steps, like step 1, step 2, but
Right.
like, what were some of the processes that you found, either helpful or not helpful?
Wow, that's a big question. Yeah, because there feels like there's a lot. Well, one, I think seeking support for sure. I still have an amazing tribe of people that support me and my family.
Yeah.
Like very tuned into the tenderness and the love and the sensitivity around times a year, but people that really showed up in a lot of different ways. So love my community.
Yeah.
And some people don't as well because they're not capable. So then there's that, you
Yeah.
know, which I can't blame them for that part, I guess. You know, I wish it was different with some things, but
Well, I mean, vulnerability is part of that. And if you're broken open and you're not used to being vulnerable, then adding that emotion on top of your grief is probably a big road for a lot of people to travel.
Yeah, well, people don't know what to do, and that gets back to the cultural piece. There's kind of a lack of structure in a way set up for like even knowing kind of steps to take to support people, which will be on my resource page when I get that together.
There you go. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I think finding supportive healing practitioners like that resonated with my path and what was helping even guide myself, because that's how I see practitioners. Like they're not healing you, you know, they're helping guide you to a place of within yourself.
Definitely.
And so finding somebody that works with is such a beautiful thing in life. You know, it can change your whole way.
Yes, I agree.
And so I was just blessed with like the clairvoyant person, and then the shaman, and then, you know, just these beautiful people showed up in my life, and like spiritual response therapy, which is a lot about making statements, right? And so you're walking a wheel of making statements and recognition, and then releasing that back to spirit. And that is just an incredible process as well. And then the sound healing.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I love things where you don't have to talk.
Yeah.
and you
can even fall asleep during it. It's like you can just be wherever you need to be.
Like hands down Reiki and sound healing and anything with a beautiful touch or massage or things to just calm the nervous system. I find that to be helpful in my life, but especially during turbulent times and facing my own death and my son's death and altars. We were just talking about altars. Definitely, I think this is a huge concept that I want to add into more workshops, but just seeing, because there was a physical death doesn't mean that the relationship is over. And I think we have to seek certain avenues to be encouraged to continue that relationship.
Yeah.
And that felt very natural for me because I've always had some kind of altar in my house or my life, or like something you're working with, right?
Right, yeah.
And so it was a way for me to communicate with my son. And when you start seeing and feeling, the communication starts to come back.
Right.
And so that was just like, just moments of like, wow.
Yeah.
You're not physically here, but I feel you.
Yes.
It's like a whole new orientation to like life and the acceptance of death, and that none of us are getting out of here alive.
Yeah, it's not happening.
You know?
You can all the research in transhumanisms with all the merging of IT and tech and like the pills to make us live, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
If it does, what's the quality of life going to be, right? Except the fact that at least in our lifetime, we're all going to die. Maybe our kids' lifetimes, maybe their kids' lifetimes, they might have figured it out to live longer or to whatever age. But in our lifetimes, we're going to die, right? We're not going to see that. So accept it. Like, find that way to accept it. Find your peace with it. You know, it's not easy, you know, because a lot of us in the West have been told that, you know, we can find our ways to cheat death. You know, we keep pushing the age of retirement back. You know, we keep pushing the age of, you know, like our ability to live longer is being pushed back. But like, what is the quality of the life that we're elongating? You know, if we stretch our lives to like say 120 years, right? Does that mean retirement now is going to be pushed from 62 and a half, 64 and a half to like 84 and a half? What are we going to do with those extra 20 years? Are we physically capable to hold a job and be a part of society and contribute in some kind of way? Or are now we just 50 years of degradation and a burden, quote unquote, burden to society that we need to figure out instead of this like maybe 20 to 30 years, you know? Like what kind of, I feel you, you know, there's like, just accept right now, like we have this finite amount of time. We're going to do the best we can with it. maybe not make an impact, because what ego needs to make an impact? Maybe we just like find our ways to help continue humanity, maybe from a quiet spot, maybe not having to shine the light on us as an individual, but as humanity in general, and just find our ways to continue the progression of humanity in some beautiful way.
Yeah, like live out the life cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Like personally, I wouldn't want to be thrown into a senior living situation and kind of forgotten about,
Right.
and you know, questionable survival skills without others, like
Mm-hmm.
for an additional 20 years
Right.
In the name of what, you know?
Right, exactly. And
But
if you look back in tribal days, we'll take the postmenopausal woman enters the crone phase of their life, right? And that crone phase is so important to the tribe, because you still have the maternal instincts of being that loving mother, but now you don't focus that on your own children. You have that love to spread out to the whole tribe and to the whole community, because you've now passed that point of your wanting to just give that love to your own family.
yeah.
And so that crone phase for a woman, postmenopausal woman, is so important for the community, for the tribe, to be continuously a part of that and to share the wisdom, the nurturing, and the loving, and the mothering kind of idea that person has. And so if we're in a situation now where we just, okay, you're at age, let's say 57, now you go to a home. Who are you going to benefit? I mean, you're surrounded by people, like tons of people that are in that crone phase, but that wisdom's not being shared with anybody but within yourselves, right? And so it's like stifling the continuation of a generation of knowledge almost,
Yeah.
in some kind of way.
Yeah, I think I mean, this might be another conversation. I don't know. But it's a reason for great dis-ease in our
Yeah.
society and culture, and maybe the rising anxiety and focus issues, and doing versus being,
Yeah.
and all the rest of this, like questionable quality of living and a healthy life.
Yeah. Yeah, like what is the definition of a healthy life now? My definition of a healthy life for a long time was working until I couldn't see straight,
Yeah.
just to provide for my family and feel like I was doing something beneficial for them, but I was destroying myself. So like, what is your definition of quality life, happy life? Have you sat down and defined it to actually know if that's what you're working towards?
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
catch-22, because we have to like kind of work with the system, and we're a part of it, and yet when we, defy it or fight against it,
Uh-huh.
doesn't always work for us.
Yep. Yep. It just
So
digs
it's
in.
like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
yep.
So before, so you've talked a lot about your spiritual practices, and you've
Yeah.
got a lot of beautiful spiritual practices. Were you a spiritual person before Oliver passed away, or did you have spiritual practices prior to that incident, so you could have these tools in your toolbox to draw on while that grief was hitting you, while you're building more tools?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Absolutely. I
Cool.
feel completely blessed with what came my way before Oliver passed. Yeah, I mean, studying Aikido for 10 years, it's kind of, I did some yoga at that time, but at that time, that was like my yoga mat. You take it to your mat. And Aikido is a Japanese martial art, and it's a very soft martial art. So it's more about going with the flow and taking on your opponent's energy, and then guiding it in a different direction.
So
you-
redirecting the energies instead of okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of redirecting, and it's based on sword movements and
Okay.
circular movements. So everything is about the sacred circle.
Okay.
And I think I've learned lots of lessons from Aikido, but the biggest one that has helped me along the way is the path of least resistance. So it has helped me to see where I'm resisting, but that can be a mental resistance, emotional, physical, all the levels, right? And I feel like it has helped me embrace full on, like the rawness of grief. So I'm not resisting it.
Yeah.
And in that light, it has only has stimulated and propelled my personal growth. And so I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. Is Aikido the way you're describing it to me? Because I've heard the term, and I know that know of the term, but I'm not familiar with the practice. Is it kind of similar esque to Tai Chi as far as like the fluidity of the movements? It seems like a little bit different because you said sword play and things like that. But as far as like the fluidity and the working with the energies of the movements, rather than like an actual like sparring kind of, fighting kind of technique.
It has that softness, that flow, like where
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of, seeing the tai chi with your hands
Okay.
and very gentle with the energy. But it also has there's throwing involved.
Okay.
So we throw each other
Okay.
and do rolls and land on the mat and slap the mat and like could you kill somebody with an Aikido move? Yes, but are you trained to do that? No.
Okay.
You're kind of like basic movement, you step out of the way and the person's gonna go flying the
Gotcha.
other way. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So it's like, or like the founder, he was so present. I mean, his energy was out to here, So when people came, he barely even touched them. Would throw them with
Yeah.
his finger.
Yeah.
And he was a master. He was a soldier in the Japanese army, but he was also a jiu-jitsu master as well. So there was with the sword. There also was what do they call that? Just well, sword techniques and stick like the Joe and like moves that. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So it was a little more than the soft.
Right.
There's also the sharper side, we'll call it.
Right. Yeah. I guess that would add to the balance of the practice, the yin yang kind of, where you have the softness, but you also have the activeness of it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's embracing the concept of Wu Wei also, where you get the maximum result with the least amount of effort. Because you're using their energy to redirect their move. So if you're using and utilizing, you can see where their energy is moving and work within that energy to like deflect or something. Then you're not using all of your energy because you're countering their energy within their energies, kind of ideas.
Yeah, there's a lot of centering too. So I always felt that from that practice, like moving from your center is very different than when your limbs are just out here flying away,
Flailing away, right? Yeah.
And it's just like your emotions too. So like I feel like it helped me be strong. It helps me be strong in tough times because you just sit in your pocket in the center, and sometimes there's nothing to do. It's the hardest thing is to pause and just watch.
Yeah.
And so then there's that element too with the meditation and the mindfulness of actually you're moving further into yourself, but you're moving a little further away from yourself at the same time. So you can see your thoughts and your stories and all the things going on that you think make you exist.
Uh-huh.
And that practice, I bow.
Wow.
It's like I only want to know more because it does. I don't think it changes the humanness of pain or grief or something you're going through, but somehow it helps you build endurance at the same time, so you can be more resilient.
Right. Right.
And move and keep it moving. And so, in my own evolving practice with grief guiding, I think that's a big point that I'm learning with and trying to create activities around, like expressive art therapy in a way. Not just that, but it could be movement.
Right.
Lots, just being creative with how do you keep your grief moving, and that could be super personal.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I really appreciate the idea of working with grief by getting inside your body some way. In depression, anxiety, those what seemingly negative emotions that we have. One of the things that I've found success with is finding some kind of, it doesn't always have to be physical practice, but some kind of practice to get back into your body. Yoga is that practice for me for the physical side, but meditation is that practice for me for the non-physical side. And with meditation, it took me a long time to get to the point of where I could utilize the stillness that I found in meditation to help me manage my emotions. But and I don't want to use the word pragmatic as in the sense of where I don't feel the emotions, but there's a stoicism and a pragmaticism that I've found now that where I'm able to feel the emotions and experience them, but not let them take me over. At least I it's been a while since that's happened. I'm not saying that it won't happen again, because there's still a lot of life to live, right? And I'm not just going to hang my hat on the fact that I've conquered my emotions. Bullshit. But I do have that, luckily and thankfully, with the practice that I found with meditation and yoga, that I found that idea of sitting with and trying to find the reasoning for the thing that has happened, and through that meditation and yoga and the breath work and body work that I do, I'm able to now, for the most part, find those reasons and start to search for the acceptance in those reasons, instead of just what was me, why me, which are all stages we go through until we find the thing that works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just sitting and waiting sometimes, or does it all start in the mind?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the other day you posted something. I loved it. Like, I love your Tao posts lately.
Yeah.
It was like, you are just you exist because you're an idea.
Yeah. Six is
And it's like,
idea in your head.
yeah, doesn't it make you just feel so small?
Yep.
You're like, oh my God, like,
Yep.
but I'm living this whole life. And yeah, and so
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like what is this all about?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
I read a book a while back. This guy, I'm spacing on his name right now, but it's called "Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It," and it was a beautiful book, and a lot of it dealt with the story that we tell ourselves, and that story that we're not enough, we're not worthy, we're an imposter. Like I shared downstairs, I'm afraid someday somebody's going to realize there's a 2-year-old child driving this adult meat suit. We just have these stories we tell ourselves. And a lot of that is, a lot of the depth of those stories we don't even realize because we've been telling ourselves for so long. Then one of the focuses of this book is finding the ways to change the story. So like when I recognize I'm in a story of whatever that I realize is not true, whether it's an emotion that I feel, an experience that I've had, the practice that he recommends is, breathe in and tell yourself, I love myself. And when you exhale, tell yourself, thank you. And if you can look yourself in the eyes in a mirror and do that practice, it has an even deeper hold. And so for me, that practice has been very beneficial for pulling myself out of those moments of the woe is me, the why me, the I don't understand, the self-doubting moments. That practice has been really helpful to me. So again, it's getting back inside of you and seeing that you're telling yourself a story. You're living a lie. You're inside of this thing that doesn't do you any good, but you still keep repeating it to yourself. So it literally, like, that visual for me is, while I'm saying I love myself, thank you, I'm literally taking the record needle from whatever bullshit track it's playing, and I'm taking it to the next track and putting it down and saying, oh, Adam's nice. I love myself. This is great. You're a benefit to humanity. You're doing something positive with your life. You have beautiful family. You have beautiful friends. Like all this new stuff that we know is true. You know?
And it's not fake imposturing if you don't quite feel it yet either.
Exactly.
One of my teachers always said, well, you have to fake it till you make it. And I didn't understand that for a long while. I thought, what's that mean? But now I realize, just in the practice that you're talking about, is you're trying it out. You're being curious. You're interested in changing the channel. Excuse me. And in doing that, eventually you see, oh, I just made a choice. Like, I just changed it.
Yes.
And then it's not, you're not faking. You're just trying to make it. And and like the power of making a choice, and even the recognition that you have one, is really poignant, I think.
Yeah.
To that whole trip.
Yes, exactly. And and the telling yourself something and not believing it at first is very important, I think, to note, because a lot of us don't believe it, and it might take you a long time to believe it. But subconsciously, what I found for myself was that subconsciously I wasn't believing it, but that caused my subconscious to ask why. Why don't you love yourself? Why don't you believe that you're worthy? Why don't you believe that you're a benefit to your family? Why don't you believe that you are a householder and that your spouse loves you? Why don't and through that, subconscious, it eventually brought those questions to the conscious mind, and it was like, well, no, I know my kids love me. I'm I think I'm a good father, and I get that energy put back to me as far as like hugs and love and like affection and all this shit, right? I am, I get positive feedback from the yoga classes that I teach. So this story in my head that I'm a shitty yoga teacher, put that aside, listen to the feedback that's coming in from external, not internal, and so you start to get that opportunity to listen to the external influences that are coming in, and then that starts to change that internal story.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing the fact that you're first telling yourself a shitty story and embracing the fact that you might not believe the new story you're telling yourself for a while, because how long have you been telling yourself this other shitty story?
Yeah, the neural
right?
pathway needs a little
Needs some
time to shift.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's
Yeah.
important to repeat that. I
Yeah.
love myself. I love myself. I love myself, because you do love yourself.
Yeah.
It's down deep.
Yeah. I'm healing myself.
Yeah.
And we were talking about tools, and I think another tool with all this choice and like states of being that come up, because we all shift on a dime, right? That's a part of that impermanence.
Right.
That's like, oh, all of a sudden everything's great, and then it's not. And I think I'm not alone in this, but many people just have lots of journals. You write it out.
Yes.
And it's a very effective tool just to get the emotions out. Like sometimes it just needs a channel. And the paper and pen, the sword is great.
Yeah.
And I would write letters to my son. Because when the words came, or I would write to death, write a letter to death. I'd write a letter to life. I'd write a letter to the universe, and burn it.
Yeah. Yep.
Because next week I'm going to feel different.
There you go.
I'm going to have a whole other trip on that.
Yep.
And I think it's just like going with that and riding that out that keeps the movement, and not getting caught in the pocket of trying to define it all.
Right.
Or figure, because the minute you kind of figure out where you're at, you're already on to the next thing. And I do believe, like earlier you were talking about, asking your guides and help, and it's a relationship with that as well. Another tool that has just, I could say I felt completely hopeless after Oliver's passage.
Yeah.
Completely, just like, oh man, this is really what hopeless feels like, or despair, or like, oh, I can't move, all types of different states. Maybe you're throwing up, or it's in your organ somewhere, in an organ, and it's just hurts, all just so many things, or endless crying. There could be, depending. But where was I going with that? I got all into that, all into that channel. But coming out of that and realizing that if you ask for help and you invite that, I almost think, like, I believe that it always shows up.
Yeah.
That your guides are there to help. And maybe you don't hear it, smell it, feel it, or anything, but in my own experience, such a personal journey, it has never failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has helped restore my hope in being human, and also acting human.
Yeah.
and they say, people do all the angel studies and the guides, and that's not really my area, but I definitely feel more in tune with ones that help me.
Yes.
And, I guess I'll go as far to tell a story.
Please.
I have had a lot of really incredible moments happen where those forces have made themselves known during this healing process. And I remember being in Oliver's room. I slept in his room for like a month or two after he passed, and it was a way of being closer. But wow, I did not realize how many other beings or forces were hanging out with me.
Wow.
And I went to sleep and I thought, I don't think I can carry this heavy, painful feeling on my shoulders any longer. Like I reached my threshold. I love that word.
Yeah.
Everyone has their thresholds. And so I went to sleep and I just was just like praying, like, please help me.
Yeah.
I can't believe this happened to me, or I just, please help this pain go away, or take this pain away, please, please, please. I woke up the next morning in this kind of lucid dream state. It was, I don't know what else to call it. It was like I was awake, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I was watching and feeling, but I wasn't really like awake in my physical environment.
Okay.
And I felt it was like the heaviness, the extreme pain on my shoulders was like sucked out of my body. Like it was being taken away.
Yeah.
And it felt so good. It was like the biggest relief I've ever felt that I can relate with, like, oh my God.
Wow.
Right? And I
love
woke
that.
up and I said, Om Mani Positivity.
Ah, yeah.
I was like, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Positivity. I was like, yeah. Oh my.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
That's great.
And that changed. That's another thing that shifted
Yeah.
everything. And I then had an insight about mercy. And I've never really studied the Bible or the Christian paths. I somewhat know, but for me, that word always has registered with the term, like, God have mercy upon my soul. But that's the term, that's the insight that came to me. God have mercy upon my soul. And another thing to bring you to your knees and totally surrender.
Wow.
And I have chills now, just
Yeah,
kind of
right.
reliving it a little bit. It's
Man.
like, yeah, and everything that's come from that and my son's death has just been magical.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't go to my knees again or this or that. And so, anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that's, that we have to respect those moments too. Whereas as much as we've accepted the person passing, there's still moments where we want them here and we still miss them.
Totally.
Like my dad's been gone for 12 years now, and I wasn't in a place when he first passed to healthily deal with his passing. I wasn't practicing yoga at the time. I was still heavily drinking and all this stuff, and it wasn't until finding yoga and working through that where I finally started to come to grips with some of the issues that I hadn't dealt with in my life, and dad passing was one of those. But I think it was about a year ago when I really got into my energy healing work and starting working with my masters and my guides and things, and stopped. I finally got past the my own personal awkward feeling of speaking openly to them.
Yes.
Because that's the thing too, and I talk to my clients about that now. It's like it's okay to feel weird about it. I mean, you're talking to like seemingly nobody, and we've been told that that's a sign of psychosis, right? When you start to talk to yourselves, or you think there's people around you, talk to them. It's like you get put in a straitjacket and you go to a padded room the rest of your life.
But if you have earbuds in, it's okay.
Yeah,
right?
totally, exactly, right? Yes, totally. There's such a dichotomy,
you're just
right?
sitting in your car talking to nobody,
Yeah,
wow.
picking your nose, talking to nobody. It's like, oh, they're doing normal things.
Sleeping while your Tesla drives you down the road.
Hey, I'm listening to my Insight timer, man. But I had a moment about a year ago where I was sitting in meditation, and I've been working with my guides for a while and trying to identify who they are and how they can help me on my journey. And I heard my higher self say, "Ask for your dad, welcome your dad, and ask him to sit down." And I was like, "Okay, cool, all right. Hey, Dad, how's it going? Would you like to sit with me?" And I felt this like brush on my left shoulder, and I'm like, "Wow, okay, that's really great." And he sat with me for a while, and we didn't really talk. It was more of the feeling I had whenever I knew he was around, that just comfort, fatherly kind of feeling that I never really identified with when he was alive, but definitely is like palpable now that he's passed. And so it was such a beautiful moment. And then not too long after that, I started working with a medium. And the medium also had some really cool, like, fatherly type incidents that happened when I was chatting with her, and one of the things that he told the medium to tell me was that he doesn't think I'm a dumbass, which I'm a very different person when my dad passed away. 12 years ago, Adam was like I said, he was still like working in restaurants, still with a different person, had a family, didn't have as many tattoos, wasn't a spiritual man, was very, very different. And as I've stepped into this new way of thinking, I've thought a lot about, like, my dad was a truck driver. Like, he was a loving human being, but I was always questioning how he would see me now, and if he would accept me, and if he would accept who I am, and what I'm doing with my life. And one of the messages the medium told me was that he doesn't think I'm a dumbass. And my dad used to call me a dumbass if I was being a dumbass, right? And so I'm like, oh, it was just
Yeah.
so nice to feel like, oh, cool, he's accepting of where I'm at. And now I've gotten messages from him that say like, thank you for doing the healing work that I was never able to do. Right, like you're healing not only yourself, but you're healing the people that have passed before you that didn't have the time, and you're showing the example for the people to heal in front of you as well. And so
Yeah.
having those moments and having those messages, it's like, man, I can't deny I'm on a path that I feel is right. And it goes back to this word gnosis, this knowing, gnosis with a G, knowing with a G, that you just know things that you can't explain, but you don't really fucking want to. Like if I have to sit here and like explain to you what the feeling is when I talk to my dad that you can't see and don't believe is here, then why am I trying to convince you? Why am I even trying to tell you that? I
It,
just feel the thing.
it's a truth for you
Yeah,
and your experience. And
totally.
I mean, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And
You made a comment in the notes that I took earlier that your yoga mat is a portal to another world, and that was really interesting to me. What do you remember the depth of the reasoning you put that down? Like your yoga mat is a portal? Because I can see the metaphor
yeah.
tied to it, but I just wanted to kind of see where your head was at with that.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing yoga in college. Like,
Hmm.
I guess I'm gonna show my age, but hey, I'm officially midlife.
There you go. Wisdom comes with it, girl.
Yeah, it was like 1995 or
Okay.
something,
Yep.
and this beautiful, was she Polish or Czech Republic? I think
Okay.
she's from the Czech Republic. She was just like this tiny little ball of dynamite, right? That was so loving and compassionate, and she
Hmm.
taught this class at the college. I thought, sure, I'll take that for an extra elective. I'll go check it out
Hmm.
because I've always been into sports and activities and things. But wow, was she amazing? She just like, yeah, I mean, I can't even, yeah, she was just, it just opened a whole new world
Nice.
of what you can do with your body and how certain, and your breath and how these, positions work on you.
Mm.
And then when you get off your mat, you bring it into the world. And just a simple thing of feeling more uplifted,
Yeah.
and like your better self is like a great thing to bring into the world
Yep.
when you get off your mat. So that stuck with me. And
Mm.
then through life, just wherever I've lived or have traveled, I've always done yoga. And then I took a break. I lived in Maine for a while. I did yoga there, but mostly Aikido.
Hmm.
And when we moved out here, after having Oliver as my first baby, I thought I just heard this big calling, like, go back to yoga, get
Yeah.
on your mat,
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole, I never felt the calling to do training or be a teacher or anything, but definitely to live my own yogi path,
Hmm.
like of learning and being curious and yeah,
Yeah.
and healing. I mean, that's I think what I'm thinking with the portal. It's almost I feel like it's this sacred space, just like the altar we were talking about,
Yeah.
where it's you connect with yourself. You're also in community. And you're it's bringing you into the present moment, like sometimes here in this culture, we have to put it in our schedule.
Hmm.
We have to get there. Even if you have to get a babysitter or whatnot, but once you get on your mat, it's like a sacred experience.
Yeah.
And doesn't it just feel just the first thing to just lay down in child's pose, it's
The
like,
best.
oh,
Hmm.
wow,
It's like walking home.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
like, yeah, and then you like slowly stretch your arms and like you find yourself in different positions that stimulate different feelings.
Hmm.
And yeah, I feel like it's just a portal to the present and working on what needs to be worked on.
Hmm.
And or maybe you lay there and cry on your yoga mat.
Right.
I've done that.
Yep. Totally. Uh-huh.
And the hot yoga, so that this in the past, well, I haven't been back because of the pandemic. I just
Right.
haven't felt comfortable going into the heated space again
Hmm.
yet. But that was all new for me, and I thought, oh, I'm I'm kind of already hot internally,
Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
like I'm a kapha type and
Uh-huh.
I just, have some pitta, but like I just thought that's crazy. You
Yeah.
go in there and you heat up,
Yeah.
like, and you get, and you smell all the sweat everywhere, the room, and all the stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
But I tried it and I got really into that, and then
Yeah.
I was a regular at your
Oh yeah.
class.
Hell yeah. I love seeing you on Thursdays.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and anyway, I haven't been back to the hot yoga, but it's fun to try all the different types and then to sit with the feelings afterwards and
Definitely.
then walk off your mat a different,
Mm-hmm.
different than when you came in.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
never thought about the mat as a portal before, and when I read that in your notes, it's like, oh my gosh, it is. It totally is.
Yeah.
It's the portal to my sanity. It's the portal to my my oneness. It's the portal to my community. It's like all
Yeah.
the things. It's like this one 6 foot long, 3 foot wide piece of
Yeah.
foamy rubbery kind of thing. It's like, okay, I can go anywhere with this thing.
Right?
You know?
Totally. Yeah. I have the long mat. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right, exactly. I got those long mats.
Yeah. Yeah, you can pray on your mat, and also like it's wonderful to go into a class and yes, you're being guided through a beautiful experience or even a hard experience
Mm-hmm.
or wherever it takes you, but that you can also check in with yourself. I always love that aspect of it and say, "Oh, you're getting to know your own thresholds, like how long you can hold something or what something feels like."
Right.
It's helping you to like feel.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard some people say, I just don't think I feel.
Right.
So I've also found it to be a portal that way too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we numb ourselves a lot in this culture, and yoga was one of those things that did allow me to feel. And at first it was awkward. I remember the first time I cried in a yoga class. I'm like, what is
Aw.
this? Is this sweat or crying? Good, nobody can tell because I'm sweating. It's
It's
sweat. It's
kind
not
of
tears.
it's dark in
You're
here. We're all
crying.
good.
Yeah, exactly. But it was those moments of getting inside my body, and I mentioned this earlier with meditation and body work, but literally like physical practice for depression and anxiety, like getting inside your body and finding what you can do, like how confident you are in your body. Create
Yeah.
confidence in your body. Create confidence in yourself through that body work. Like pushing up a lot of weight, holding a yoga pose for a bit of time, like finding what your body is capable of is very important for starting to conquer some of those depressions, some of those anxieties, some of those emotions that can really take us down. Is
Yeah.
getting back into our bodies, and not only are we creating that confidence, but we're also making that chemical cocktail to get our brain back into a place, right? So when we accomplish a task, right, whether it's a physical task of crossing something off our physical list of a to-do list, or doing the yoga practice because you said you do the yoga practice, your upregulation of dopamine and serotonin is beautiful, and that what makes your body feel good, makes your brain feel good, right? And so when you have those accomplishment moments in those depressive, anxiety, grief-ridden moments of life, that is that start of the chemical cocktail to start building those chemicals back into your brain in a healthy level, and taking the cortisol and taking all the other stuff that keeps you in that
Yeah.
place of the fight or flight, where your body just is processing the grief or the emotion that you're in, and it starts to down regulate your cortisol, up regulate your dopamine and your serotonin, and get your body back into a more normal state, quote unquote normal state.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like it's us showing our body that we're willing to put forth the effort also. It's not just up to the chemical cocktail of our body. We're going to physically do something to help that cocktail get made. Right? I'm going to
Yeah.
add the ice. I'm going to give you the shaker tin. I'll even shake the goddamn thing for you, right?
Yeah.
I'll make the goddamn cocktail, right? Just get the ingredients there, right?
I'm thirsty,
Exactly.
man.
I get an umbrella in my cocktail.
Yeah,
I
right?
got a dopamine cocktail with an umbrella.
Those special orders going around. Adam, right?
Oh man.
I love it. No, it's a great description. Yeah, getting down to the chemical process. Like, how can you have some agency over that?
Mm-hmm.
And definitely through the choices to get inside the body for sure.
Yeah.
That's super empowering.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
So you've been very very methodical with it, seemingly from conversations about the way that you've worked your way through this, and very upfront with yourself and with the process. Very open to others with the process, which was very helpful for me, because I think I was still processing my father's passing, which we've only known each other for about 4 years, 3 years, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it hasn't been a long time, but
Yeah.
decent enough. but through your openness of talking about Oliver and your process, and even going over to your house and you showing me the shrine that you have for Oliver, the tree out
Oh,
back,
yeah.
and all of that really helped me understand that I wasn't done grieving for my father, and I hadn't maybe even properly grieved. So there were some journeys that I still had to do to process that grieving. So your openness and your willingness just to be a human being about this process has been extremely helpful. What's the catalyst been, or not catalyst, but like where have you allowed this now a beautiful moment to help catapult you into the life that you're living now?
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
That warms my heart that the totem pole in that space can invoke something like that in another, and I've seen it invoke that in others too. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, a guy made that out of a chainsaw, by the way.
Wow.
The totem pole. Yeah.
Chainsaw
Yeah.
carving. I love those.
Like we were just trying to, side note, we were trying to figure out the right space for, to honor and to look at and interact with and feel him and honor his life. And anyway, I found this guy online where I thought, oh yeah, totem pole. And there's an owl on top, which is like, a totem for many of us, and a little John Deere tractor, and he painted it. Amazing, all with and he would go out and get the red cedar himself and then sand it down and get it to a place where he could carve all those things. So definitely the love that guy put into that brought it to the land too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the word catalyst, so I think the first time I heard the word post-traumatic growth, it kind of it blew some sockets in me where, I've done lots of different types of therapies, and just to really study it as well.
Yeah.
And I just feel so blessed that I'm having a positive outcome. Like that we talked about community and tribe. We talked about healing practitioners and family. And all of these things have come to my aid, and my former experiences and teachers, and I feel all those things in hindsight as well have set me up to be somebody that's not stuck. And that started to feel like inspiration of how can I help? I need to serve in some way,
Right.
which is always a beautiful practice in healing ourselves.
Yeah.
Because it's an exchange. And so it just started with that feeling and that thought. And as time continued, like the universe has a way for things to present itself, right? Because you're making the intention, you're starting to have the experience. You're like, okay, please show me the next step. Show me the next thing. I'm open. I'm here. Please show me how to serve. And then I ran into, there are many characters I met along the way, like doing some different types of retreats. Women's retreats, and also I don't want to say grief guiding because the creative grief studio was more about that. But one woman, I met another woman that she has some Navajo background, but we have a parallel story. So she lost her son at the same age, a different trauma story.
Yeah.
It was just crazy how our worlds lined up.
Right.
And so studying some things with her and how to help yourself and others walk through a grief process. Then it started with that too, even just water rituals.
Yeah.
To help wash it away or soothe, just like all the other soothing practices we've been talking about. But I think, and then the creative grief studio came, and then simultaneously on the land I was doing some yoga retreats, but just a couple times this summer,
Yeah.
And then it was everything building upon the next thing. And then we got the tent, and it was
Beautiful tent.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just so cool the way it stretches and it can fit the situation. It can be open. It can create a womb. A lot of people can fit underneath it. People always have a good feeling in it. And so then there was that, and this past summer it started to move into like more sound baths than yoga.
Yep.
Which just took its natural course.
Exactly, yeah.
And there was more ceremony, and then I started adding the grief workshops. And so I don't know, it just has its own ball of life, sort of, and I'm just catching up, or I don't know, I'm just following it, you know.
I feel like that's part of that process is when you find the trust and you feel the path and you feel aligned. It kind of takes the pressure off of you as the human being as to like, oh, I got to develop the idea, I got to action the idea. It's like, no, I just got to keep up with the goddamn idea.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool, I'm right behind you. We're doing it.
I'm staying open, right? Like
exactly.
you're just help me see. I'm staying open, and the moment I thought, gosh, when things get more intense and when you're really searching, things to show up. It's part of that magic where this creative grief studio showed up, and I did that for 6 months last year, and I'm still working on some of the paperwork, but it was like going back to school. Yeah, it was amazing. It was like reading incredible articles, weekly Zooms with like in class with just a really eclectic group of beautiful, mostly women were in it, all women. Yeah, and the ladies that run it, like the original owners in South Africa, and another woman's out here on Vashon. Is that it? Vashon Island?
Vashon, yeah.
They were all set up for this. They've been doing the Zooms and like the Ruku classes for like 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good for them.
So they were just running their course, and it's a application process. So you go through, like, I felt the integrity in this program is very strong. And the box is not even a box, almost, if you want to say, is so open. And that registered for me like, oh yeah, I want to work with, I think my offering can be working with people that can't really find it in the talk therapy session. They need a tactile experience. They need an avenue that works with their needs to release.
Yeah.
And it's not massage therapy, but it's like just having a full toolbox of, I'm not a painter, but it's certainly been fun to explore painting.
Yeah.
And It's not like you're painting something, you're connecting. Whatever comes out is kind of a mystery until it comes out. But it's just amazing how it affects the state people feel.
Yeah.
Afterward.
Yeah, painting's been been very helpful for a lot of people. I mean, just one person off the top of my head it struck me as astounding that this person is now a painter, and I, by no means do I know this person. I know this person because he was an ex-president of ours, and I know the reputation that this person held. But George W. Bush, like the more recent George W. Bush that was president, he was very questionable. Had a lot of controversy around him. 9/11 happened. There was a lot of just questionable things that this gentleman did or was held accountable for. But since he's now left the presidency, he's found painting and has found a lot of time donation work. Like he donates his time a lot to people in military that have had traumatic experiences, have just is become basically a humanitarian through the painting work that he's done, where before people would almost want to vomit when they say his name, depending on which side you're from, right?
Wow.
So it's cool. Like when we start to find these peaceful practices, a lot of the person that we thought we were starts to go away because you find the fluidity of life and you stop kind of fighting against it.
Yeah, and so a lot of the expressive therapies are about creating meaning for yourself. And so then when you find an outlet to create the meaning, then you can kind of have the insight and have clarity around your situation.
Wow, yeah.
And I've personally experienced that a lot. Or just say you're in a state of rage. We've all had that, or anger. You want to run away from the anger, but kind of going into it, it's like, well, I guess I'll just go break a bunch of dishes,
right?
Or for me, I would just chop wood and burn it.
Yeah, welcome in those emotions.
Yeah,
welcome them in. Don't live in them, but welcome them. They're there for a reason. They're there to tell you something.
Yeah.
I've talked about this before, but there's a Rinpoche I listened to a couple years ago that was talking about anxiety. And he's, 65, 70-year-old Rinpoche. He's been meditating his entire life. And he's talking about anxiety and how he's anxiety ridden. And I'm like, wow, a freaking Buddhist monk that's been meditating for 65 years is anxiety ridden. And he was saying that one day during his meditation, he felt anxiety come on. And instead of what he used to do was push it away and say, no, get away from me. I don't want you here. He said, anxiety, come sit with me, sit next to me, and let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's find out what you're here for. And the anxiety was like, whatever the message he told him. But, after that, anxiety left. He just delivered the message of, hey, maybe watch out for this today. And then just walked on its way because it was heard. It gave us the opportunity to be heard. That's all we want is to be heard.
Yeah.
We just want to have our thing said. We want to be able to express our emotion, our thing, our reasoning, the thought on our mind. And half the time we're cool with that. We'll wash our hands and we'll leave,
Absolutely. You bring up this point when I'm thinking about trauma, like maybe in the future I'll specialize more in trauma because trauma can come up with healing grief. But it's, anyway, the idea is that there's just like you're saying, having a conversation with it. I've heard this before from teachers that work with trauma. They say, when it happens, help the person have a conversation with their own psyche. So it's the same idea, like welcoming it in and saying, I hear you, I see you, I'm working with you.
Yeah.
But the crucial piece is to actually do it.
Yeah, right.
Don't like come back to it, because if it'll just keep surfacing, it won't, until you really, not acknowledgement is one piece, and then diving into the journey with it, another. And that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like the idea of awareness, and awareness transforming itself by being aware.
Yeah.
So it's just being aware of itself. It's almost like the Tao, it's just doing its thing.
Yeah.
But you're making the choice of like just to see it.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
and work with it, and then all of a sudden you might be rid of that total paranoia or anxiety.
Yeah.
Or maybe it sits there to continually teach the Buddhist monk in all of us. I don't know.
Right, exactly. If it's there, it's still teaching. You gotta listen.
Yeah, like how long can you sit with it?
Yeah.
And
that's a hard one.
Yeah, I think that's where grit comes in, and endurance.
Yeah.
And but expressive therapies, 150%. Just, I love that. Also, lots of times people need to be busy with their hands, or writing, or also like interacting with metaphors. I find that to be a really interesting exercises.
Interesting, yeah.
Like at Sacred Dwelling, something I've been adding to the parts of the themes of the workshop is like, oh, go take a walk in the woods and ground yourself and have an intention, or you're looking for these specific things, related to this theme, and then just drop it and walk around. And be in nature, a part of nature, in nature, right? So, and what people bring back is incredible. Like they bring little robin blue eggs and feathers and just symbols from nature that show up just for them in that exercise.
Yeah.
And it creates a whole interesting dialogue.
Wow.
In conversation. And you can like see the healing happening.
Yeah.
Just by sharing and creating space and being witness to other people's relationship with metaphor.
Yeah. Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
There's a book I'm reading right now called The Art of Impossible. It's Stephen Coulter. Talks about flow state. And one of the things he talks about, just to relate it back to what you're talking about, is, we when we work, right, when we're doing our work, our tangible work, like say write a book or writing an essay or, creating a website, doing all this like admin type stuff, right?
Right.
That can be creative. But, we hit those roadblocks sometimes and we need a reset. And one of the best resets that we've found, you can look at scientific provings of this, is walking in nature. Right. And so you can say that your intention had already been set because you were working on some kind of project, let's say writing, right? So I'm going to write 150 words for for this half an hour, right? And so
Yeah.
after that half an hour, I'm going to have another session, but I need a break. So my intention is to write, but I need a break from that. So I'm going to go out and walk in nature, no headphones on, no, just me and nature. Maybe I have my dog with me.
Yeah.
But through that, you get this somatic response because your body is, synced up to nature. You got that circadian rhythm, right? And then it's almost like that time where you're in the shower and all of a sudden that idea pops in your head, or right about to fall asleep and you have this great thing, right? This is that opportunity for that to happen because you're taking away, you have your intention set, your external stimuli is gone, you're around natural sounds,
Yeah.
and that natural sound will start to trigger that brain to start thinking in ways that that it's now relaxed enough to think of, and so you start to have those aha moments and those connections of those metaphoric moments like you're talking about, or that clear thought of, oh my God, I just have my idea for my next paragraph. This is fucking great,
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot that can be benefited from walking around in nature, taking those breaks from yourself, having your intention set. It's like that conscious conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I was thinking sometimes herb helps too,
Totally. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, yeah. The inspiration, the creativity, yeah, I was thinking of the rest and reset that you're talking about. Like being in nature has that, in Spanish, it's like cariñoso, like a cariño, like a cuddling effect,
Yeah,
almost.
I
like,
love that.
like
Cariñoso?
Yeah, cariñoso, like massaging you, and it's okay, and I think it's like Franklin Lloyd Wright says, like study nature, love nature, be in nature, trust nature. It'll never fail you. And I believe that 100%.
I do. I love meditating in nature now, and that's one of my favorite things. And up in the Northwest, it's great because the only thing you have to really worry about are big things, like
Yeah.
tigers, or not tigers, but bears and leopards, and fucking leopards. Where the hell am I at? I'm in freaking Africa or something.
I love where you are.
Jaguars and shit, cougars and stuff, right? But like in Texas, I've traveled to Texas now. I was from Texas, and meditated I like to meditate where I go now. And when I go to Texas, like everything is sneaky and hidey and poisonous, right? There's rattlesnakes and like big poisonous spiders and like fucking just saw a guy like catch an alligator in his backyard down in Texas, right? Like there's shit that can go sideways quick. But I still feel completely safe when I go outside and I meditate in the wilderness outside in like Hawaii or in Texas or in these places where there are dangerous tropical animals and things. I feel completely safe. I've set my container. I feel connected. I feel like if there was, like, say, a rattlesnake that would go by me, he'd look up and be like, "Hey, man, enjoy your meditation. Just don't step on me later." And just like fucking just slither on off. I'm at peace with what I'm doing. They're at peace with me doing it. So it's like I'm just in this container of safety.
Yeah.
Totally feel safe with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the animals start interacting too, because there's that maybe a safety, I guess, It's like the sound bath we did this summer.
Yeah.
I posted that. I took a little video. Blew me away how the birds were just totally
crazy.
Going off.
Yeah.
Like, it was incredible. It was so like, whoa, like doing it with you.
Definitely.
And interacting, like, yeah.
Anytime we do outdoor sound baths, the animals just chirp right in.
Yeah.
I did one a couple weeks, last weekend actually at a friend's house, and I had like a chorus of frogs back there. Like the traditional like ribbiting frogs, like you could hear them saying ribbit, like in this chorus of beauty, and like it was just so layered, and it was awesome. The cacophony of just like frog sounds just coming at me. That was great.
That's where it's at. And I think these kinds of experiences help us almost, I don't mean this in a way of non-caring or no self-love, but forget about ourselves. You're just blending with life. Yeah. You get out of your, I am somebody. We're so on about being somebody that it's like, it's really tough sometimes. Yep. So it's nice to choose practices where you're just so into that thing, like the flow. I mean, what do they call that when you're in the zone? Yeah,
flow state and zone. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, most definitely. It's your brain's working as optimum. It's doing all the things. It's conserving energy, but still giving. It's wu wei, basically, right?
Yeah.
You're giving the biggest output for the least input, right? It's great. They're running efficiently.
Yes. beautiful, efficient systems.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, interconnected, one
Uh-huh.
with all.
In a perfect
But
world.
yeah. Well, you asked me about sacred dwelling a little
Yeah.
bit in the place. So I just wanted to say that in about 2 months we'll have a yurt put up,
I'm excited about
and
the
I'm
yurt.
super stoked for that.
Hell yeah.
It's been a really long process, and that's okay. I've had a lot of good teachings of patience and
Yep, there you go.
surrender, because you get excited about something or having a space or just to have indoor dry space in the woods, and so that community events and healing and workshops can continue to happen.
Year-round sound baths, year-round
Yeah.
healing. Yeah, totally. I'm
Yeah.
so excited for that.
Yeah, so that'll be coming, but I feel for contractors that are out there building things. There's a supply chain holdup on many fronts because of COVID. So it's just been like, well, we need to wait another week. It's like, the rain is coming.
Yeah, exactly. We need to beat the rain, damn it.
Beat the rain. But then I watched him put a whole roof on in pouring rain, and he was like, it's another day in the office. I was like, whoa, dude.
All right.
All right, I'm not going to worry about that weather thing so much. You can get out in any kind of weather.
I guess that's good perspective. I guess as a healer sometimes, a couple weeks ago, I had a guy on my table go into a minor seizure, right? And that's, but at the next client after that basically fell asleep during their session. Right, so I guess you take with what you get. We all have our hazards in our job, right? It's rain for him would be seizure on the table for me,
Right.
We're here holding space, doing what we do,
Relativity is good.
Yep, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the? Do you know what the time frame is? Will the yurt be up by the end of the year? Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. By the end of the year.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I was hesitant to say next month.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I think we have it on site. We just have to finish the platform but I have the permit. I'm pretty stoked. Yeah.
Nice. And that'll be a big focus for you. Just continuing sacred dwelling and continue the event space.
Yeah, the vision I see is continuing the sound baths. I like to open it up because it's not a yoga studio. I feel it has a different feeling to it. Other people could come and give. I have a buddy who works for an outdoor nature school, and he gives classes on plant identification and mushrooms and everything from that
Very
to
cool.
My friend's Girl Scout troop.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I just want it to be open and very community oriented. People will have different needs to come. And I have to balance this with my family life, which is very important to uphold my agreements with my husband.
Definitely, right?
And he's 100% the wizard behind the curtain.
That rhymes as shit. He's such a great man.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's so solid and giving you props, honey.
Yep. Bad shout out to Ryan. He is such a great guy. Love you, Ryan.
He's just the guy that would give the shirt off his back, and he's just good.
Yeah.
He's just pure and good. And
the minute I met him, he's got this soft smile.
Yeah.
That just shows you that he's a very caring and deep caring human being.
Yeah.
Very, very just great interaction first off the bat, and every time I see him, he's always smiling. He gives me a hug. Oh yeah, I love his hugs. Yeah, great man.
Yeah, so I appreciate him because it is our family home, and it's what do you want to welcome, and what's my personal space, and this, so I'm respecting that. But I do see him, he's more involved in help orchestrating things to happen. He's a solution guy.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, we need a compost toilet. I'm not renting another honey bucket.
Right. Yeah.
Screw the honey buckets. And we were out there a week later building the structure, So it's stuff like that he puts the grit into it. And even though sometimes a dream isn't always clear, you can start with a vision. I was having dreams about this yurt. And that's where that piece started.
Oh, beautiful.
And which gets to the name of the whole thing, sacred dwelling. So him and I came up with that together because we were thinking of, it's all about dwelling spaces. It's all about creating containers to hold something sacred. And so the tent has its own dwelling, and then the yurt will have its circular sacred dwelling.
Yeah.
The land has a dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
We're always working with the land, and then all the people coming have their dwelling, and it's all just,
I love that.
yeah.
Wow.
Me too.
Beautiful.
I get excited about it.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
I've heard you break it down before. The name, that's amazing.
Yeah, and looking more into the future, I would love to eventually meet one-on-one with clients and open that avenue.
Okay.
But it'll feel better when there's like a warm, closed, wintry space.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I was like, well, we can't come and hang outside quite yet.
Yeah. Everybody just sits in the sauna for all their sessions. You know?
Oh, perfect. Which that's a whole other, so the
Yeah.
sauna, like that'll be in people's like appointments. If they want a sauna and do the bathing, that'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to burn stuff in the backyard, there's a fire pit,
It's one-stop shop just to go get your healing on.
Yeah, totally. And and like we have sandbags, like in Aikido, there's exercises where you run at the sandbag. I don't do this a lot, but I have. And but there's space to be heard is the point. Like
Yeah.
you can run at a sandbag and hit it as hard as you want, and no one's gonna hear you.
Right. Yeah.
Except you. You might
Right.
scare yourself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Uh-huh. Find that inner voice.
did that just come out of me?
Uh-huh. It can be startling at first when that inner voice
Yes.
comes out, and that first like
Yes.
shriek or scream or something. It's like, oh, damn, that was in me the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if that doesn't work, then doing the hydrotherapy with the sauna, and we're gonna put in just like a little cold pool. You can dip down in there and
Fits in.
scream underwater if you need
yes.
to.
I'm just gonna come stay at your house for
I
a
love
weekend.
it.
Just
Please
doing
do.
like water therapy. I'm gonna be screaming out in the woods and stuff.
Bring your table.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have the back corner, and I
Deal.
see it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Love it. So so you kind of talked about what's next for Sacred Dwelling.
Yeah.
You're wanting to make this year round now. You have the yurt coming in. Do you feel that the offerings that you're going to continue to offer for yourself will be grief focused, or do you think you'll start to open it up for trauma? You said earlier, kind of expanding your offerings a little bit.
Yeah, I think for now, just this year, it's been grief workshops. So I've done like a bowl breaking ritual, which is another beautiful, powerful metaphor, and did some harvest from loss during September, like with the harvest theme. And then this month will be remembrance. We were talking a bit about Dia de los Muertos and some rituals, and I've always felt inspiration from that whole holiday, if you want to call it like a Mexican holiday. I told you I lived in Guatemala for a while, so it's definitely was just a blessing to be able to see some of those practices. And I didn't realize how they would come to my own personal aid with altars and offerings and the whole idea of food and sharing stories and the honor and libation.
Yeah, right.
They make a delicious mole around that time, which
go.
is, has the chocolate sauce with everybody breaks out their best dish. And
Hell yeah.
it's so much more than that, though, and there's probably plenty that gringos don't see when they're roaming around and walking through the cemetery, but there is a lot that is visual and that you can relate with, as far as like metaphors of a flower and what the flower brings up. And so anyway, I'm designing a workshop around that, which is called Remembrance, Honor, and Connection Through Living Altars.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's going to come out hopefully this week. We'll see how the creative process goes.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but look for that the end of October, and I'm just going to go from there. My dear friends, lending me her back patio that has heaters and beautiful curtains and a kind of glamping living room. So
Very nice.
thanks, Mickey.
Yeah, shout out to Mickey. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Right on. And so where can people find you?
Well, I have a website.
Okay.
Definitely work in progress.
Yep.
Gonna revamp this winter, up my game.
There you go. Right on.
But that's sacreddwellingllc.com.
Okay.
Then Facebook, I had to go the Facebook route. I have a page, Sacred Dwelling LLC, and I think Instagram's pretty much the same, but there's like an underscore in there, Sacred _ Dwelling.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I try to keep up with that stuff.
I know. It's. I almost want to. I don't care about how big I get or how much money I make, but I want to just make enough money to pay somebody to do my social media management. I'm just so tired of that shit.
Right.
That's the only amenity that I want is like just to make enough money to survive, and then also pay somebody to do my social media because I'm just so sick of this crap.
It's a big deal, like the whole marketing piece, and you have to market yourself, no doubt. And as like Camo always says, like shameless marketing kind of a thing.
Marketing, yep.
You just put yourself out there. And at the same time, I'm seeing how much time it takes.
It does, yeah.
It's like to do any kind of graphic design or just a small little imagery with the right wording to put on Instagram. Mm-hmm. It's like you already have if you're like me, I get lost in the details there. And I'm like, oh my God, 4 hours on this silly little image.
Totally. Just deciding on which emoji to put after things,
You're like, oh, fuck the emojis. Yeah, you're like, come on, guys, Anyway, you hope people get the memo.
Exactly. My friend Hannah, who's a Reiki master and took me through all 3 levels of Reiki, I take something from her now where I send Reiki with all the messages I send. I put Reiki in the emails. I put Reiki on the Facebook posts, Instagram posts, just so they can reach the people they need to reach, and that when they do reach them, they reach them wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. And that again, like takes some of that pressure off of me as the person, because I'm almost like I'm channeling from my guides what to say, how to say it, and then I'm letting the Reiki say it as it sends.
Yeah.
So no, a little less pressure on me because I'm still trying to craft it, but it's more of just trying to hear what my guides are telling me to say.
Absolutely. And none of us are meant to do it alone.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Like, that's a whole other podcast maybe with individualism versus like community.
Yeah.
And I really feel that a lot of the byproducts of COVID are really waking us up to how much we need community and to be in community, and that it will heal a lot of our dis-ease with just feeling a bit isolated. So whether it's grief or body pain or whatnot, like it can be very isolating. So to feel heard or anyway, community. I was thinking that and you're not meant to be like a Reiki master in the world alone either.
Totally. Definitely.
So
there's a guy named Simon Sinek that I talk a lot about. He's a business coach, management coach, human coach, and he talks a lot about how you go into any bookstore, you'll find volumes and shelves and books and books and books about self-help, but there's very little to any books about group help.
Wow.
Right? And we all talk about self-actualizing as like, I've just actualized myself, but who helped you actualize?
Right.
And the actualization of you, does that just help you, or does that help all of humanity because you've now realized the innate gifts that you have and how they weirdly, uniquely mesh together into this thing that only you can do?
Yeah.
Is that only for you? No, that's for everybody, right? So this whole self-help, self-actualization, self, we're doing it. Yes, we are the individuals doing it, but we're doing it for the benefit of humanity, not just for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like if we want world peace, great. Where does that start? Break it down to the nation. From the nation, we go to the state. From the state, we go to the country. The country's community. Community to the city to the household. The household to the individual. Mm-hmm. It starts with that individual. You can't ask for world peace if you can't find it yourself, right? So you take it to yourself, you find it yourself, and then you start to build out from there. You start to let that shit grow.
I'm seeing the butterfly wing effect.
Totally.
Like just that little effect, and then boom, there's a hurricane, and like
Yep. You're nice
across
to
the
the guy that just,
country.
for whatever reason, this guy just kicked his dog, and then he went out to the world with this angry face, angry attitude. But then the grocery clerk was the nicest person that, hey, how was your day? What's going on? Like, blah, blah, blah. Can I help you? I'll take your stuff to your car. And then, like, just this one act of kindness changed that
Yeah.
person's day. And then that's just going to ripple out and ripple out and ripple out. So, like, your seemingly innate act of kindness that just is maybe natural to you and maybe not even be something that you're trying might have the biggest effect on somebody's day. A
That's
smile,
beautiful.
a
Random acts of
random acts of
kindness.
kindness make the
Yeah.
difference, change the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's change the world.
Let's change the world. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Well, Kylie, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
sharing your story. I know grief is really tough to talk about, and I appreciate so much your vulnerability and your wisdom, your guidance, and the path that you're willing to share because it helps us all.
Thank you so much for having me and also bringing in my son
Yes.
and honoring his life and all the gifts that he's the gift that keeps giving.
Definitely. I never got to meet him physically, but I feel
Yeah.
like I know all from
Yeah.
your stories and from just the feeling I get when I'm around you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I also want to thank you for having this rad podcast. I am enjoying listening to it and all the diversity and all the different people and their gifts and like it's way better than the news.
Thank you so much.
So you're doing a good job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your
Yeah.
love. And we'll get you back on. I'd love to continue our conversations and just see
Yeah.
what else we can riff on. So
Right on. I
we'll
love
see
you,
next
man.
time, love. Love you too. Thank you so much for spending time with Kylie and I. A lot of really good tools in this conversation of ways that you could manage your grief, manage your emotions, step towards your gifts. Just really, really love this conversation. A lot of depth to it. So, if you know somebody that could benefit from the conversation, please share it with your friends, with your family. If you like the podcast and you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and leave some comments. Really, really helps us get the distribution out and reach more people and start to build that community. Thank you again for joining us. Obeisance and love to you all. We'll see you next time.